Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Web3 Native Podcast. Today, we actually have very timely guests who have come on to share about some interesting and exciting developments in the crypto space. Please welcome Arjun and Ishan from Polygon. Hello.
Hey, hi, Shikai. Thanks for having us.
I guess so.
Thank you for having us.
Indeed. So we've been in touch for some time via the Asia DeFi Network and also just sharing thoughts around the industry. I'm so excited to dive into the recent developments on Polygon. But before we do that, as usual, we always like to go back to your personal journeys in crypto. So for everyone to get to know you, why don't we start off with some sort of personal stories on how you got into crypto and into Polygon? Whoever, Arjun?
Sure. I'll just jump in. So for me, crypto started way back in 2016, when I was sort of researching, which are sort of some of the new technologies which are going to have like a big impact on our future. And that's kind of when I came across blockchain technology, and I started researching it. And at the time, there wasn't like a lot of material or knowledge about blockchain, so you had to read like a lot of blogs, you had to talk to people. So it was something like that. But I kind of really became very enamored by the idea of decentralization. And and I just kept studying more about it, and at some point I just decided that this like I want to build a career in this space. And then in 2020 is when the folks at Polygon then reached out to me, and at the time our mainnet had just gone live, and we had to sort of start sort of the adoption process, as one might say, right? Like reaching out to apps, figuring out how we need to sort of do business development, how do we build the teams, that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what I was tasked with, and ever since then I've been doing that. So yeah, so that's that's about me and Polygon. Yeah, Ishan.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, I mean, actually, I'm fairly new to crypto, I would say, in terms of getting to know a little bit more about it. Actually, obviously, we had heard about Bitcoin and Ethereum back in 2015, 2016, but never had the chance to actually delve deeper into what real life implications it could have uh, on businesses, on society, on economies, right? So, but it was only just last year when I was on a break, just taking some time off to take a breather, and I got into crypto. And in India now we have good products which allow people to invest in crypto. Very smooth onboarding, good user experience, good user interface. So I got into trading, and then I figured that this is definitely something I need to delve deeper into, right? And I started reading more about the technology. I started getting more into understanding what AMMs are, what stable coins are, etc., etc. And I joined Polygon because I saw that there was an opening at the growth team under Arjun. So I just pinged him on LinkedIn and we set up interviews, and yeah, got that role. But since then, of course, a lot of things have been happening. 1 week feels like a year in terms of developments. And the exposure that being at a company like Polygon provides a very holistic exposure, right? You're not just limited to DeFi or NFTs. You get a lot more understanding about the entire ecosystem. So, just those last 6 months that I've been at Polygon here have been, super high in terms of, very steep, a very steep learning curve. So now I'm, part of the NFT and gaming team at Polygon, and yeah, just really excited by everything that's happening, not just on NFTs, but also on the DAO side, also on the creator side, Web3 creators, entrepreneurship, just really excited about all of this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to dive into all of that for sure, the NFT side, the gaming side, the DAO side, and the various partnerships as well. So great. I think for the benefit of some of our audience members who may be new to Polygon, which is already a pretty well-known name in crypto, it would still be good to kind of refresh. How would you describe Polygon in 1 or 2 sentences?
Sure, Ishan, why don't you take a crack at it? Yeah.
So basically, I think given that I have been a fairly new member of Web3 technology. I have a lot of friends who are Web2 users, and how they ask me about Polygon
Mm-hmm.
and how I explain it to them is basically, just like, for example, you can look at Polygon as con- a highway on top of a congested road. So, that makes things easier for people to understand, because with Ethereum, we have all these scalability issues, but we are there to basically, take on all the major burden about transaction execution, calculation, but at the end of the day, ultimately linking back with the same road, with the same Ethereum network. So ultimately, I think that is a good analogy that, we have been using to basically educate Web2 users in a very layman sort of a term. Arjun, if you would like to add more to it.
No, I think that covers it. So just like how Vishant said, right? So we're a scalability, we're a scaling solution for Ethereum, and our focus has been the Ethereum ecosystem. So since we always felt it was the best ecosystem, the philosophy of what Ethereum represents in terms of its theory of subtraction, and the way it is sort of thought out, how to scale blockchain technology, how to reach out to the masses, what kind of tooling you need to build. So all of that is something which is very exceptional, and it sort of is something which we as a company also believe in the same philosophy. So that's kind of when we decided that if we need to sort of solve the scalability issues of blockchain, and then we chose sort of the Ethereum ecosystem, and we felt that if we could inherit some of the best aspects of Ethereum and like create like a high performance kind of blockchain layer which would have similar performance to Web2 kind of technology which people are already used to, then that would lead to mass adoption of blockchain technology. So that's kind of where the thought came from, and that's why that's the problem we're trying to solve.
And there's just a lot of emphasis on being aligned with Ethereum and being the highway on top of Ethereum, even, right? And there's like a cultural alignment as well, as you mentioned, with
Yes.
the decentralization, with subtraction. So I want to just take the chance to get a somewhat inside view of like the DNA and the culture of the Polygon team, right? We already mentioned a little bit of that. Would you like to just add some color? What are some principles and like motivations that guide the team and the decisions?
Sure, and if I were to just briefly talk about company culture in sort of a sense, that's also for me like when we structured the teams, right, and when we decided what kind of culture should we have, like how should we build teams, what kind of responsibility should we give. So I think for me inspiration came from Ethereum itself, right? So I talk about this Ethereum's philosophy, or rather this theory of subtraction, which is that the way, or rather the path to true scalability comes when you don't try to control things, right? When you let sort of the ecosystem sort of organically grow, and you don't try to control every aspect of this ecosystem, versus you try to enable others within the ecosystem to build things. That's kind of when true scalability happens, right? This aspect of control, if you want to continuously control things, it will start working against you as you begin to scale. So this is kind of the same philosophy with which we build our teams. So one of the things what we always championed is that we let people take charge of situations. So everybody in the team is a decision maker. Like everybody gets to make decisions, and whatever decisions they make, good or bad, we as a as a part of the leadership will always back those decisions. So one was have that. So follow the same system. So with our teams, there is full freedom. Like for me, I have full freedom from my management, the founders, etc., to make decisions, to do things what I feel are right. And because all of us are continuously making decisions and continuously moving ahead and forging ahead, that's I think why we've been able to sort of achieve as much as we can. So it's a very unique blend of company culture, and it's only possible when you hire very unique kind of people, who espouse this kind of mentality. Like this is not something you can go and replicate everywhere. You need the right people for something like this. So this is kind of what is our company culture. Like this is how when I had to sort of build all this, and even when the founders decided, like that's kind of how we thought about what kind of culture we want to bring. And this kind of culture, the advantages is as you scale, it becomes even stronger, because people become more independent and they're able to take more decisions, and we're able to organically build business units without us having to sort of control everything, right? And so this is kind of like like sort of a sneak peek into how we like to run things at our end, and over a period of time this has shown like good great results. So, yeah.
I'd like to now move us towards like some of the main topics that we want to discuss that have happened recently. So, of course, one major one is the acquisition, I guess, merger or acquisition of
Mhm.
the Hermes network. And I guess like this kind of like was quite an interesting bit of news, because in the past
Mhm.
it's always been kind of like quite organic type of growth, right? Where
Mhm.
integrations and like you said, like subtraction. This seems like an addition. You're purchasing like a whole tech and the whole team coming in,
Mhm.
and at the 250 million Matic budget, right? So what is the story behind this M&A, right? How did it come to be, and then how do you guys make the decision there?
So the story of this goes, or at least the genesis of the idea goes all the way back to I think November of last year, about November, December, when we were kind of trying to understand like what is the future of scaling, right? So this was the same time when we were rebranding ourselves from Matic to Polygon, and we were discussing that we want to be an aggregator for all the different types of technologies, right? And it's great, but the question is how, like how do you do something like this? So this is kind of when we looked at all the different technologies out there, whether it's zk rollups, optimistic rollups, and when we sort of did that deep dive and that analysis, we kind of realized that, like, if you were to talk about true scalability, like true unfettered scalability with, let's say, 1 second transactions and privacy natively enabled, like the best case scenario, which is possible from a blockchain perspective. Like, I think one of the answers we found, or what we even now feel, is that stateless zk clients, right, zk enabled clients could potentially sort of solve for that. Right. So you need to have zero knowledge, a technology, so which gives you a high degree of privacy. And of course, when you have ZK rollups, then you have other advantages, right? Where you can do sort of, let's say, settlement on layer one, and you can have a very high degree of security. But also by being stateless, right? You can solve other problems of state float, and where a stateless client just requires needs to have the block headers, and as long as there is perfect data availability, you can always source the transactions within those blocks and ensure that every block is correct, right? You don't necessarily need to source that from a validator. You can source it from any node nearby to you, which makes it extremely fast and scalable, right? So the more the number of nodes, you don't necessarily need to increase the number of validators. You need to, as long as you have a large number of nodes also, you can solve this problem. So just to get a bit technical there. So this is kind of, we started so working backwards from this maybe perfect future. We kind of started making those steps, that what is it that we need to do now. Of course, like, we were obviously always in favor of trying to maybe building this organically, but to build this organically, what do you need to do, right? You need to hire the right teams. You need to have a research division. And when we looked out there at who was doing this really really well, we kind of found Hermes as a team to have much the same philosophy as us, having done amazing work on ZK technologies. In fact, one of the founders of Hermes is, you could say, the progenitor of ZK rollups as a concept. And talking to this team, we kind of realized that if we were to like combine our forces, right, and work together towards this goal of EVM like ZK, which is EVM enabled and has, like, the future of being maybe stateless and things like that, you can achieve true scalability. Which is why that while it is an acquisition, we still call it a merger, right? Because
Mm.
for us, like, as a from a philosophy perspective, both the teams are trying to achieve the same goals. We have actually combined forces, right? Versus, so this is kind of why we still call it a merger. Like, a lot of people ask us,
Mm.
like, technically it's an acquisition, why? Like, but like,
Mm.
from a pure philosophy of how we operate, like, this is a merger for us because both of us are chasing the same goal.
Mm.
And which is why it's very exciting for us. I think also, just as a quick tidbit, if I were to say that, we put together about $1 billion
Mm.
for building out ZK technology. Now the merger with Hermes was about 250 million, right? So there's a whole lot left, and there's a big story which we are going to talk about in the weeks to come. So we've already talked about some of the building blocks. Like, we've talked about Polygon Avail, which is that
Mm.
data availability layer, which I was telling you about, right? Which is when you look at the future best case and you work backwards. What are all the parts you need? So you need a ZK, EVM based ZK solution, but you also need like a data availability layer where you can start working towards like stateless clients. So all these different parts, we are slowly like Legos putting them together, and the full vision will be out very soon in, let's say, maybe a couple of months from now.
Mhm.
So a lot of exciting updates to share. Yeah.
Really cool. So the idea of scalability, right? How can we kind of like bring this back to the analogy? Because I think to most kind of users and I guess people who are coming into the space, right? The idea of the superhighway is very clear. And currently we are managing to do that with like the POS equivalent, like the current implementation of Polygon, right? But there's a grander vision of like scaling further or like making a suite of tools.
Definitely.
So this how do we kind of like bring it back to the analogy? How what does ZK and stateless look like once we have
Okay.
that?
So let's leave these terms aside. Let's maybe
Yeah.
leave ZK and let's look at what you need, let's say, from a blockchain ecosystem, right? So what does a blockchain typically consist of, right? You have something called the state of the blockchain, right? Which is this centralized database which has all the transactions. This is stored in all the different nodes, right? You need some form of consensus mechanism that all the nodes, like whether it's 51% or two-thirds consensus or 2 by 3 plus 1 or whatever have you, some sort of consensus mechanism to like ratify transactions, what's correct or what's wrong, and that then gets added to the global state, which is sort of your global database again, which is the blockchain database, which is replicated and across every node. So these are some, and then you have clients who are doing transactions, etc. So all of this, right? So it's like a computer where you have a compute layer, and then you have the data layer, right? So and it operates just like that. These are blockchain basics. Now, what does scalability mean? Scalability, if I were to say in one sentence, is basically we are able to offer a level of performance and cost which is equivalent, if not better, to Web2 technologies. Right. So what you can get on AWS, you need to somehow be able to do something better or equivalent. Right. That is when you'll get true adoption. Right. Otherwise, there'll always be a trade-off. Then there'll always be that conversation that blockchain is good for certain use cases, but not all. But to make it truly generalized, you need to offer that level of performance. So the question is how? Like, so how do you do consensus faster? Like, how do you ensure privacy? Right, like, so when you look at the perfect future state of what Web2 technologies can achieve and how to achieve these same, let's say, performance measures or KPIs in a Web3 environment is kind of when you start to solve those different problems. This is kind of when you will arrive at this sort of ZK stateless kind of, you could say, answer, where what would be like true scalability. Like true scalability or Web2 like scalability can come from this solution. This is, by the way, all theory. Nobody's proven this yet,
Hmm.
but if you try to solve it, this is kind of what the answer is, what you get. And that's kind of why we designed a strategy that way, that if you look at the future of what blockchain technology should be, right, not at what it could be, we don't know what it's going to be, right? We're still experimenting and doing all this research, but what it should be, and then you work backwards from that. That's when sort of it begins to become clear why you should use ZK technology, why you need to like why how you need to like sort of attack this problem, and this is kind of when you start to arrive at this kind of solution.
Hmm.
And like I said, the thing with blockchain is that none of this is proven. Like we don't know. For all I'm saying all of this, I may have to eat my words. That there could be some other solution
Hmm.
which could
Hmm.
offer true scalability.
Hmm.
But this is kind of what the research says, and that's kind of what we want to build. And to do that, we need, like I told you, the right technology, the right teams, and which is kind of what
Nice.
we are trying to do. So this we're not just trying to build ZK technology. Like, we're trying to build this entire ZK roadmap,
Hmm.
this sort of roadmap towards true scalability. and
Hmm.
and and slowly we've been doing that in a very structured manner. First, we talked about data availability, which we need to solve. Now we've talked about what Hermes will help us solve. Then there are going to be a few other like parts into this sort of story, which will then sort of reveal this entire roadmap which we have of how we can solve for true scalability.
Right, right. So just so I understand it correctly. So when after the merger, right, are we saying that basically the ZK technology will be part of Matic's Polygon's current implementation, or are you planning to like have a layer even above the current layer where ZK, or is it
So
like alternative where you can have like two different types
sure.
of like transactions or projects?
So it's,
Yeah.
it's sort of like an alternative, as one might say. So
Hmm.
what we want to do as an infrastructure provider, we want to put all the options on the table. That's
Yeah.
kind of why we've created Polygon, which is an umbrella for all types of scaling solutions.
Hmm.
Right. So while we are trying to solve the problem of true scalability, like, we want to put every option on the table. So for example, if the user wants to use, let's say, optimistic rollups, we will have that option as well. If you want to use, let's say, a ZK rollup chain, you can use that. If you want to use a current Plasma POS chain, you can do that as well. So it's something like that, right? And what we kind of feel that the future will always be multi-chain, and there are solutions out there which would scale really really well on our Plasma POS chain, which may not need like a ZK kind of implementation. While like certain cases like DeFi and payments benefit a lot from zero knowledge technology, where privacy and these kind of things become like very paramount.
Right.
So we want to put all the options on the table. The developer can then decide, and that's
Right.
kind of how we want to, like, because as an infrastructure company, that's what we see is our responsibility. Like, put all options on the table, and the developer can decide.
Right. So it's kind of an alternative that will be, I guess,
Yes.
somewhat in parallel of the
Yes.
current POS Plasma Polygon.
Yes. So there's a
And
Plasma POS chain, and then there will
yeah,
be also be this Polygon Hermez chain.
great. Yeah, and so that means that it will kind of like live as a separate chain on its own as well, right? That's pretty interesting, because we understand that the Hermes network is currently running, right? And they have their own kind of like very unique consensus mechanisms around this
Yes.
like proof of donation, right? Where a certain portion will actually be burned, a portion will be given back to a fund that will be used for like development of public goods. Even will all these tokenomics continue to stay, right? But just
Great question.
replacing the Matic token with it.
Great question. So we will be unveiling the updated roadmap. Right now that we have one company and we have combined our efforts, I think we can maybe, like, like the things which we at Polygon or Hermes were doing piecemeal, I think we can do better together. So an updated, like, clearly this points towards some sort of updated roadmap. So we will talk about that in the days to come. Yes.
I see. Okay, so it sounds like some major changes are coming. Because I can imagine, if you have a lot of like different tokenomics and different consensus mechanisms, but it's all kind of like under the Polygon umbrella, it could get
Yeah,
pretty messy,
it
right?
doesn't solve this issue. It doesn't solve
Yeah.
for simplicity, right? We want to make things easy for the developer. So there has to be a unified set of token economics, which sort of is works for the entire ecosystem, which is what we will, sort of we are working on, and we will have to add some, we will reveal at some point.
And I guess one last kind of like specific question here is that with this merger, basically the Hez token will also be completely replaced with the Matic token, and there's going to be a token swap that's going to take place. Of course, the date and all that is not yet announced, but the ratio has been announced. What I'm most curious about is that it seems that currently based on the fully diluted valuation, there's like 469 million worth of Hez tokens, but we're acquiring them with like 250 million of Matic, which kind of doesn't measure up. So I'm wondering whether, what happens to the unvested or the fully
So
diluted portion.
hence
Yeah.
the ratio, right? So see, when you're doing a token swap, you will obviously, the focus of the swap will be the value of the tokens which are already there in the market, right? The ones which are not there in the market are basically are do not, you could at one point. So okay, let me explain it this way. Let's say I have 10, let's say my token supply is 10 million tokens, right? And 5 million are there in the market, and the 5 million have been sold at $1, right? So you could say that the fully diluted valuation is 10 million, right? But there is no guarantee that if I release the 5 million tokens which I have out there in the market, that others will buy them. For all you know, my value could get dumped. Right? Who
Yep.
knows? Right. So the fully diluted valuation in some ways can be misleading, right? It's like if it's like me saying that my house is worth, like, $1 million. It's worth $1 million if there is somebody out there willing to pay $1 million. Like me saying it's worth $1 million has no value. So which is why I feel that, like, while the fully diluted valuation is obviously a certain number, the number of tokens out there in the market which are being traded are the real, sort of, you could say, where you can get the real value of what is the value, and what that could mean. And of course, we looked at all of these factors, and we decided on a particular number,
Okay.
and a ratio, and this was discussed, of course, with the Hermes team, who also found it, like, to be reasonable.
So the unvested tokens, will they be burnt or are they swappable at all?
No, so we are figuring that out. We will, like I said, so we will come up with like a proper, like a proper roadmap on, what has to be done. So we had a call on this today, and then I think in the next week or so we will, start to talk about these,
I
about what
see.
exactly is going to happen, which contracts are going to be used to swap, and, if suppose you swap, what happens, and, that time period. So yeah, so those things are yet to be released to the public.
Yeah, certainly one to watch, and because this will kind of form a precedent, right?
It's a precedent,
Of the
yeah.
first of its kind in all of crypto. Yeah,
Yeah,
in fact,
definitely. Bit of pressure because of that.
yes,
So we need to
you
get
have to
it
get it
right.
right.
We need to get it right the first time. But yeah, I mean, it's very exciting for us as well, right? It's the first time something like this is happening, and I think this will lead to like a lot more interesting things. Like if once we're able to assimilate it, this will kind of give rise to this new science of how you must, what is the right way of doing it, and
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because in a way, I think this is the first, I think, sign of a consolidation in the multi-chain world, right? Because we always talk about multi-chain and so many side chains, so many layer two solutions are coming
Mhm.
out, but they haven't started consolidating. This is kind of like the first incident. And so it'll be really exciting to see, whether you continue to do this,
Mhm.
and allow me to just segue a little bit, because you hinted at it a little bit with the 1 billion ZK
Mhm.
strategic fund, right? And of
Mhm.
course, this is 250 out of that 1 billion. Will Is the rest kind of earmarked for similar activities? Are we going to see more consolidation and therefore kind of like a conglomerate forming around Polygon?
So I can neither confirm or deny this information. No, I'm kidding. So I think definitely. So they're like I told you, right? So you have to just look at the different Legos you need to, like, build a successful kind of solution. So you need the right teams, you need the right technology. So the 750 which is left is going to be a combination of some similar things, some maybe not so similar. And but yes, the word you used, very interesting word, conglomerate, like, which is kind of what I feel a multi-chain ecosystem would be, right? Since there'll be different teams focusing on different things, so that definitely is sort of the future. Like, that's the Polygon roadmap, which is points, which is a multi-chain future.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's in the name itself, right? Polygon, right? It's supposed to be like kind of multifaceted and
Exactly.
various parts. Yeah. Perfect, perfect. Well, another part that is multifaceted is not just in terms of the infrastructure and chains. It's also in the kind of like the application level, or like the vertical
Mhm.
focus. And we've seen quite a few of this like focus areas emerge, being very responsive to what's happening in the crypto or Web3 landscape, right?
Mhm.
So the ZK Strategic Fund was one of the most recent announcements, but before that, actually there were a few actually announcements of some sort of ecosystem fund, including a Polygon Studios a fund, which is
Mhm.
also 100 million, and then a DeFi for all 100 million fund as well.
Mhm.
So, shall we talk a bit about that, right? The more kind of like application or social, multifaceted part of Polygon.
Sure,
So, I guess
sure.
here back to Ishan.
So yeah,
Or
Ishan, if you can cover like the
Yeah,
studio fund,
sure,
would
sure.
be very interesting, and the idea behind it, like, yeah.
I've seen that the current Web2 world is definitely not equipped to basically help support all these artists, help support and get them the true ownership of their works that they truly desire, and create value out of them. So now we had all these NFT projects also building on Polygon, all of these like OpenSea is live on Polygon, and we also quickly realized that games and NFTs appeal a larger portion of people rather than let's say DeFi. Like, it's easier for people to relate to a game compared to when you talk about algorithmic stable coins, for example.
Mm.
So I think we also sort of believe that out of, let's say, the next 100 million users that are going to enter into crypto, gaming and NFTs are going to play a huge role in that, because what I think there was this tweet by Kane from Synthetics that I saw, that DeFi is low attention but high impact, but NFT and gaming are the opposite, right? And that majorly caters to and covers a large catchment area of users. So again, the entire idea is that we truly believe that gaming and NFTs, when they work together, are going to revolutionize the entire space, and that is what is happening as well, right? Currently, you look at games like Axie, you look at games like Zedrun, people are earning livings out of them, out of whatever they are playing. They are able to monetize their time from whatever they are consuming there. So at that point, you truly start to take a step back and think, right, that I'm doing something that I love, and at the same time I'm making a lot more money than, say, a 9 to 5 sort of a role. So if
Mm.
that is the sort of technology that blockchain is enabling, right, it truly means something, that it is truly paradigm shifting. And with Polygon Studios, that is what we are trying to do. So with Polygon Studios, we basically want to become that bridge between Web 2 and Web 3, and support projects on NFTs, on gaming, on culture, on the creator economy, on other Web 3 technologies that empower such creators, right? And we want to basically be that go-to hub where, all these projects who would like to build something on blockchain, on Polygon, are being provided the right kind of support, whether it's in the form of investment, whether it's in the form of marketing, whether it's go-to-market strategy, whether it's technical expertise, whether it's infrastructure support, basically an entire 360-degree support system that Polygon has to offer to these players who would now would like to make that jump from Web 2 to Web 3. Now it's all about again, we have announced Polygon Studios. The team is working, really hard to basically, put all the pieces together, and we are making all those progress behind the scenes. And I think you can expect the full launch of Polygon Studios in the next few weeks as well. So the entire idea is, to basically become that hotbed of digital culture on the blockchain, and we would like to gather that mind share in the space as well. That Polygon is a well-proven scalability solution that can provide all the tools, everything, all the support that you require to basically enable your onboarding onto Web3 possible. So that is what we are trying to do with Polygon Studios, and that is majorly about what we are trying to do.
Yeah, and this model is kind of different, right? Because instead of like ZK, and we're talking about mergers because it's at the infrastructure level. At the application level, I can't imagine we're trying to acquire all of these like different games and projects, right? So this kind of investment is almost like a little bit further, like at arm's length. So it almost feels like it's not a VC style as well, because it's not a financial type of investment. It sounds to me more like an incubator, accelerator, launch pad type of thing. And I guess it's implied in the studio's name as well, right? How would you describe this relationship that Polygon will have and the role Polygon will play?
So you're correct. I mean, we are not here to, get into the project game. We are not there to get into the VC game. What we want to truly be is, the enabler that can facilitate, everything. So you can look at it as, we being consultants for them, basically, in a way, right? And we will basically provide all support systems that they do. So let's say, tomorrow you have an idea, you hold great IPs, and you have a brilliant idea, and that you are able to execute it, but you don't have the wherewithal, or maybe the know-how, or maybe the funds required. So what you can do is you can just come up to us, and we can help sort out everything for you, in terms of funding, in terms of marketing, in terms of maybe finding the right developer team for you to basically execute your realization.
Yeah.
But again, right, I think we mostly are trying to act as enablers here, particularly because that is what our expertise is. Like, being a public blockchain at Polygon, we don't build projects of our own, we don't build products of our own as well, right? So we don't even want to get into that space. We just want us to basically become that hub. Like, let's say tomorrow, I'm just throwing it around, maybe it's a throwaway word. Let's say Warner Brothers wants to create a NFT marketplace or a metaverse on Polygon. How will they do that? So, we want to take that mind share. They can come up to us, and, we can basically facilitate all the ecosystem support, all the technical support, all the financial support that they could require to basically, bring that into realization. So that is what we are trying to do with Polygon Studios. And the $100 million fund that we have earmarked for Polygon Studios is, again, just that sort of an investment where, I mean, we are not even looking for any financial returns, to be quite honest. I think it's more about,
So is it a grant or an investment?
It's going to be investments. But it's more of a signaling investment where, we would like to show the partners that, we are there, we have skin in the game with you. We are there every step of the way with you. And, we would like to facilitate all of that you require from our end. And that is something that we are planning on doing with them, just to, give them that sort of confidence that, we are always there by their side to facilitate the dream that they have, or the objective that they have of getting onboarded onto Web3. So with Polygon Studios, again, we are looking at the cream of the crop projects, right? I mean, the highest or the biggest of IPs. Like, if you speak about tier 1 projects, we are probably looking at tier 0.5 projects, so all of these are definitely something that we're looking at. And, we just like to point them to the fact that, in terms of everything that you require, we have it. And that is what we are doing with, even UNXT. So they are doing a Dolce & Gabbana drop, Dolce & Gabbana being, one of the biggest luxury fashion brands in the world. And we have also earmarked out of those, out of the Polygon Studios fund, we have earmarked around $10 million as a creator fund with UNXT, with the UNXT team. So the UNXT team is basically, Nervora, which is the publisher of Vogue and Wired magazine in the Middle East. So, given that background, they obviously have really great connects in the really exclusive fashion industry, plus all the creators that are in those networks. So, that is just another implementation of how, or not even implementation, it's basically a representation of what we are planning on doing with Polygon Studios, just to attract the biggest brands, the biggest gaming studios, the biggest IPs, and, build their projects on Polygon and, just there to support all of them.
Yeah, there's a slight kind of a difference in approach, right? So are you talking about, is this a very Web2 or institutional focused fund where you're trying to attract the biggest Web2 companies in? Or are we talking about supporting the small projects who are all trying to get onto Polygon, or maybe both, a combination, and then maybe it's some level of prioritization?
Yeah. But again, a major part of it is going to be about, majorly from the Web2 to Web3 bridging that we are trying to do. So yeah, but all of this to say that, it covers both aspects, in terms of Web2 legacy projects and Web3 projects as well.
Awesome. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you for Ishan for the long explanation. Arjun, is there anything like to add? Otherwise, we love to move to the DeFi for All fund as well, because that's also kind of a major focus area, as I understand.
With respect to DeFi for All, it's sort of a similar thought. What we kind of again realized is that DeFi projects have unique requirements, right? So there's this whole concept of, let's say, liquidity mining, right, where you need to be able to provide, let's say, to attract DeFi users, you need to be able to provide a certain level of yields, or you need to be able to maybe build innovative DeFi products. This would mean like a combination of investments, not just across liquidity mining, across grants, investing, but also focusing a lot on the infrastructure, aspects of it. For example, simple thing would be like getting, the graph enabled, getting chain link enabled, having great RPCs like Alchemy and Fura, having all of those infrastructure pieces in place as well. Like, for example, even node infrastructure, like with Morales and a few other partners. We're also working on some other things like, very easy one-click node setup for, for developers and users. So DeFi had, just like gaming and NFT, had different requirements, and we wanted to be able to give, like, again, a 360-degree sort of, you could say, service, for the lack of a better term, to the sector, where we could not just help like ideate, but we could also help fund, invest, also provide liquidity mining, and this would be across the board, whether it's tier one projects or whether it is just teams figuring out something new. DeFi operates with in a way just like how NFTs, right? There's certain Legos which you need to join together, like, and at the base level is let's say lending and borrowing, right, which is the heart of any economy. And then on the basis of that, on top of that, you can build, let's say, leverage, and then once you have leverage, you have options, futures, and other different kinds of money market instruments. And this is kind of where we are also seeing a lot of NFT plus DeFi kind of use cases as well, right? Where NFTs have a huge amount of value, and now you can use NFTs as collateral and build DeFi use cases around them, and you can swap maybe NFTs, right? And when you have to swap NFTs, now you need to figure out price discovery, right? And now when you're figuring out price discovery, you need to solve for things like wash trading, right? So there's so much involved in this. Like we typically, tend to oversimplify maybe in the business world, that, oh, people can swap NFTs. There's a lot which goes into people swapping NFTs. Like, you can create an NFT fund. Yeah, not exactly that easy. Like, there's a lot of things which have to be done. And this is kind of what we realized, that all of these infrastructure pieces need to be put into place. Like a very simple thing, like what we were working with the Horizon Games team, like is there a great NFT wallet out there? Like, is there a wallet there where you can log in, see all the NFTs, figure out the latest price, get some analytics on, let's say you have a crypto punk, can you give me analytics on what is the price of the last 5 punks which are sold? Like a true NFT wallet. Like, that's an infrastructure piece and extremely central to, let's say, an NFT and gaming environment, right? Now to be able to focus, bring a level of focus here and to encourage projects to do this, you need a fund, right? So you're beginning to see how we have thought about this, how we have thought that DeFi is unique, NFT and gaming is unique. Both have unique drivers, both have unique kinds of infrastructures, unique kinds of people, and so that is why you need to build businesses within Polygon which would cater to these kind of requirements, right? And that is kind of what we've done with this DeFi for All, with Polygon Studios, with the acquisition of Hermez, which is now the same story but on the infrastructure side,
Mm.
right? And this is kind of how we think about building all of these businesses, right? Try to break the goal down into what has to be achieved, what the community wants, and then sort of work towards building out what has to be required, right? And like I said, the key here being that you need to provide that 360-degree support. Like, you cannot just have a fund. Money doesn't solve all problems here. I mean, a lot of the things we're trying to solve here are unsolved problems. Nobody has solved them. So which is why, like, it has to be a little more comprehensive than that. And that's kind of what Polygon Studios, DeFi for All, our acquisitions, that's what all of this represents.
Mm. Yeah, I love the thought around the 360 and going to the nuances and nitty gritty that people may not realize that is required and super helpful for all of these developers. And
Mhm.
also tailoring the approach, right? Be it for like gaming, you need to have more culture; for DeFi, more
Mhm.
creative ways to deploy the capital. And
Mhm.
in fact, actually, that's one area I love to explore a little bit deeper, which is for the Polygon Studios, maybe it's a bit more straightforward, right? If a Web2 company wants to come in, right, sweeten the deal a little bit, help them hitch with some financial support by deploying those funds along with everything else. For DeFi, there's a lot more ways to utilize the capital, right? With the staking, lending, providing liquidity. So
Definitely.
is the DeFi for all fund kind of like going to be deployed in this kind of all these different ways? And
This it's
even when
already
it's
it's
idle, is it
no
going
no
to be
it's been
used? Yeah,
no no not like that. We're not looking to mobilize the fund itself and
right.
try to get gains on that fund. Like, no, definitely not a plan. Oh, yeah, $100 million fund. We should stake it somewhere. No, no, that's not,
Yeah, right.
that's not what
And
we
use
were.
the yield to invest. I mean,
Like, yeah, well, we should, like, yeah. No, that was not the plan. But like I told you, right, there were so many different things we needed to do. So I think what we started with was something very simple, like liquidity mining incentives. Like,
mm,
how do we so one of the underrated things about Polygon, which I always talk about, is that it's extremely fast and extremely cheap. Like, it's a great place for new users to start their blockchain journey, right? Because you can start with 50 cents. Like, you can buy Matic worth 50 cents, do as many transactions as you want, right? And gain that confidence in how blockchain technology works. Like, very simple things, like, you need to approve contract before you stake, right? That's two transactions. You can't do that on Ethereum when every transaction costs like $20, $30. Like, I can imagine myself, way back when I was a college student, like, I don't have that kind of money to do these kind of things. But on Polygon, you can. So one of the biggest challenges, what we realized early on, is just getting people to try our technology. Like,
mm,
how do we create like a simple incentive for people to come and try our technology so that they can see how awesome it is, right? And just like how in the real world you use things like maybe discounts or, like, other programs to get people to try a product. Similarly, we've thought, okay, well, let's do liquidity mining. Let's offer higher yield so that people at least come and try. Like, people
mm,
will take that extra effort to try. And to our surprise, we found massive adoption. Like, people love the network. Like,
mm,
I've talked about this before, maybe on another panel, but like, Aave, within I think the first 30 to 45 days, reported that they had 26,000 unique users on their platform. First time users, never used Aave before, right? And it's something that they were also completely zapped. Like,
mm,
how could these many new users come? But this is the power of Polygon. That it allows, it's cheap, it's fast, it has great UX, and this is what gets lots of new users into blockchain for the first time,
mm,
right? So liquidity mining is what we started with because, like I said, the challenge is just getting people to try Polygon. Post that, then we moved into, like, maybe sort of trying to see, okay, how do we encourage Polygon native projects, like Polygon native DeFi projects? Like, how do we encourage people to do innovative things? So this is kind of when we started doing lots of grants,
mm,
right? So we really went out there pretty aggressively and gave a lot of, like, lots of, maybe not very large grants, maybe like just 10 or 15K in most cases, but to a large number of teams. And trying to, like, because all of us come from developer background. Like, I had business, but I'm a developer. Like, all the founders are developers. Like, and this is, and we kind of realized that even with developers, you need to take a chance on people. Like, nobody gets business right the first time. Like, sometimes, people will try one app, people will try two apps, they'll get it in the third app, right? But if you want to build a blockchain future, we as a company need to take a chance on people. We need to allow people to maybe try something and fail. And the last thing I want is that because a person didn't get a grant, they give up on their Web3 dream, and they don't, like, for me, I want people to be able to quit their jobs and start Web3 businesses, right?
mm,
Whether it's in DeFi or whether it's in NFT, where if you're a content creator, like we've seen over a period of time in the Web2 world, the content creator, always gets the short end of the stick,
mm.
right? Gets literally nothing. Like, while here in the Web3 world, the content creator holds all the power. Now you have major blockchains and funds chasing these content creators, willing to offer enormous sums of money just so that they get access to their content. It's complete role reversal. So to enable these kind of things, like you need to be able to take a chance on projects, take a chance on people. This is also like what these funds represent, right? Like just like grants we are giving out with the mindset that we know that 7 on 10 this may not result in something. But if the developer is nice, he's passionate, and he wants to do something, and he has a plan, then we'll take that chance. So these kind of things like liquidity mining, giving lots of grants, trying to look at how do we create homegrown projects, how do we create a situation where people are trying innovative things, and when you have an infrastructure like ours, which is very inexpensive and fast, many new business models are now possible. Like something very simple like auto compounding, right? Where you could never do that on Ethereum because the costs are too high. So there's so many new things you can do, like new kinds of financial instruments you can build. Like there are new things you can do with flash loans, right? So you have apps like Fudu Combo, etc., trying to do interesting things with flash loans, which is a very interesting Web3 only primitive. Like there's no parallel of this in Web2. So we want to be able to we want to enable not just in DeFi but in NFT. Have homegrown projects developed within the Polygon ecosystem. Where with built by teams trying innovative things, and this is kind of where a lot of our sort of funds are deployed as well. And of course, like how Ishan was saying, that with Web2 companies, we want to be able to make those tactical investments to help them, to encourage them to come onto Web3, saying that okay, you put down 50K, we'll put the next 50K, right? And together, we'll help you spread the risk. We'll take some of that onus on ourselves. Let's try to build something. Let's not not do this, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like you have to take that chance. You have to try to build something amazing. You cannot just sit and wait for the world, wait for things to happen. So this is kind of what these funds represent. This is kind of like it's not just a fund or an effort. It's sort of an insight into how we think about things. Like this is what I'm really trying to like kind of communicate, why we have these funds and how we've thought about things.
So also on this, just to add, I mean, on the creator side, now that we touched upon it, I mean, now fans have an opportunity to become professional fans, right? Share on the upside with their creators, having social tokens, having all of this. And you definitely need that sort of a, you know, infrastructure like Arjun mentioned to facilitate all of that. Because if I have a community of 1,000 diehard members, I need to have that infrastructure where all the on-chain activities are, really affordable and really fast for my professional fans, right? So I mean, just on that side, right, I think even though a lot of product market fit happens on Ethereum, but a lot of these things we want people to build on Polygon because of how scalable it can make all the creators that are trying to develop their communities, their social tokens, their community tokens, their access tokens, on. So I mean, that is what is another aspect of Polygon Studios that we are trying to touch. I mean, we have all these communities like Seed Club, Friends with Benefits, and
Yeah.
we want all of such communities to also start getting built on Polygon, where their treasuries are here, and we can basically be the place where all these DAOs are getting built.
Yeah. I really start to hear like the culture and the vibe come through between the lines, right? Of like giving people chances, of signaling confidence, being the kind of like safety net in a way, or deal sweetener just to get things going, and being the enabler that you're talking about. And I also hear a very strong core theme of like democratizing and creating opportunities for people to come in and do what they want, be it start your own DeFi business, be it becoming a creator, setting up a social community, and of course one major one is being like, because not everybody is kind of like entrepreneur or creator, right? Maybe they want to join something, and that's where I think the social circles and maybe even like being part of a DAO is, I think, one of the possible alternatives as well. So this is where I think it will be a perfect segue to the Polygon DAO itself. So we've all seen the news this week, actually today, when it came out as the time of recording, about the Polygon DAO being announced. And there are a lot of details which are already out, but still a lot of open questions, right? We see, for example, the idea of a representative council model and like some ideas of the council. I hear some news bits here and there about maybe even allocating some funds from the DeFi for All into this Polygon DAO and allowing participation. Surprisingly, I don't see a lot of like Polygon core team members on there, but rather a lot of like projects, be it smaller projects, larger projects, infrastructure providers to be represented in this DAO. So would you like to just walk us through again the story behind the DAO and then the vision behind it? Which parts are still kind of like are very clear and which parts are not yet set in stone and are to be built in the future?
Sure thing, sure thing. So essentially, this DAO is where you see, like our philosophy, right, which is the same as Ethereum's philosophy, which is the philosophy of subtraction, right? Where we now see, so now we've reached a point here at Polygon when we have, a pretty very large community. We have a large number of transactions happening. We have a large number of DApps. Especially on the DeFi side, we have huge number of DApps on our platform. And this is kind of when we ask ourselves the question, right? So what's next? So how do we continue to build our ecosystem in sort of the most fair and decentralized manner? And the answer was very clear that we need to relinquish control of how this ecosystem is running. Like we don't want to be that team where it's always our business team constantly like cutting deals or doing something like that. Like, this is not who we want to be. It should be, we are a public infrastructure company, and our growth should be community driven. And this is kind of what the genesis of the idea was. This is also why on that DAO you don't see like a whole bunch of Polygon people,
Yeah.
tapping away, because we don't want to control this. Like this should be community run. And this is kind of when we contacted projects like Aave, like Sushi, and the reason, because all of these are also community run projects. Like who better to learn from than from people who have already implemented this model and who have experienced some of the pros and cons, and could help us with their experience of how to run DAOs and decentralized communities more effectively. So this is kind of why we went with like the kind of governance model which we have right now, which is with the council model. So we wanted people on the council who have run decentralized communities, who have that experience, who have played around with different governance models and know their pros and cons. And this is kind of how we want to structure it. Again, the objective is to grow our ecosystem, and of course this with this DAO, if I were to talk about it broadly, no specifics again, since now it is community driven, so the community will decide many aspects of it, of how it has to be run. But if I were to talk about it broadly, we definitely want this DAO to have a fund. This fund would be used to incubate more projects building on Polygon and within the ecosystem. The decisions on these projects, whether they should be funded or not, should be community driven. Of course, there would be some tiers here. Some of them would be decided by the council members. Maybe the smaller grant sizes. Some of the larger ones, let's say liquidity mining incentives, will be decided by the community at large. There will be presentations. The community will get to ask questions, and this is kind of how we want our ecosystem to, let's say, organically now sort of take on a life of its own, and then sort of start growing. And we feel that this model is the most scalable model. Like there are a lot of people who have misgivings about whether it should be DAO run. DAOs can be slow to make decisions and things like that. But what we feel is that, like, if you set up the DAO in the right manner and you have the right people who are aligned in the right way, from with the same philosophy, I think great things can happen. And of course, there's so many different models we can work with, like to incentivize teams to apply, to incentivize projects to be a part of this DAO. So there's several ways we are looking at this. We will be coming out with a proper model. So I don't want to jump the gun and sort of say something which may not be exactly right with respect to the details. So we will be publishing those details as well. But like the core effort of how we think about this, like why we are doing this, is basically the theory of subtraction. Like we want to subtract ourselves from growing our ecosystem. We no longer want it to be in our image. Like it should be in the community's image. They should decide what should happen, and this is how public infrastructure should be run. And so that's kind of what this effort is all about. And yeah, and I hope that in the times to come, this will sort of be the beacon of how ecosystems should be grown and how ecosystems should be run. So it's very exciting for us as well, because this is something so new for us as well, and want to see how this would grow and what would happen, and our learnings from this would then be transferred into other businesses which we're running within our ecosystem, and maybe all of those should be run in a certain way as well. So we this is how kind of we're thinking about it. Like this is in some ways the test bed of how we will sort of organize our entire community, and we aim to be a completely decentralized project. So yeah.
Indeed, and this has been a very clear trend for almost everybody in the Web3 space, right? Like to eventually move towards DAO or even start off as a DAO. And there are still, of course, many challenges to be overcome. And one of the core concepts is the idea of like progressive decentralization, where we can't just plop it to the community and say, okay, now
Yes,
you take over, right? And
yes,
so
yes.
in this kind of transition phase, what role will the Polygon team and you guys be playing in the, I guess, coming immediate weeks or months at just conceptual level?
Sure, sure, definitely. So conceptually speaking, I think still a large part of the heavy lifting when it comes to running our ecosystem, which is like all the communities or the community channels, a lot of the marketing, like all of this heavy lifting is what our team will be doing. So a lot of the grunt work is something which our team will be doing. As a part of supporting the ecosystem, because it's not just about funding teams. There's so much which goes into making a team successful, right? You need to connect them to investors, etc. So how do you get investor interest in the stuff? Like how do you do those kind of things? So there's several things which I think the team will still be involved in some aspects. I think what we want to focus on with this DAO is give the ability to the ecosystem to choose which are the next or the new concepts or the new projects which should be or could be built in the Polygon ecosystem. I think we're looking at it as a series of problems which we need to solve, right? So number one is to pick those projects and to figure out, and to build that community, right? Which is, and take decisions in a decentralized manner. Then of course you have those other aspects which go into making those projects successful, which is marketing, funding, continuous consulting. As and when they have questions, you need to maybe pivot. You should have somebody to talk to. So I think starting with this, we will then begin to sort of, how do you say, build more functions into that DAO to the point where the DAO becomes like a company in itself and is able to take decisions just like any other organization. So I think it'll have to happen in a stepwise manner. I think progressive decentralization is the smart thing to do, because again, like a lot of these concepts of decentralization didn't exist 18 months ago. All this is new for everyone. Like nobody really knows how it's going to pan out or whether it's going to be perfect or not. But it's such an amazing concept that we must try. I think this is something so unique to Web3. This is something you can only do here.
Exactly.
And right, so we must try, and you through maybe some trial and error, we'll figure it out. But we must try, and we must take this risk. And so there's several people who said maybe you shouldn't do this. Like everything is going so well. Why? But this is the right thing to do. So
Yeah, yeah, aligned with the spirit of like
yes,
subtraction and scaling with the community for sure.
yes.
And so one critical piece for Web3 ecosystems, right, is to of course decentralize, but also creating the right mechanisms and incentives
Hmm.
so that they will act in the right way that the system desires, right? And so
Hmm.
I can already see some early signs of that with the Polygon DAO having, for example, the requirement that each council member champion a proposal, otherwise they'll be
Yes.
kind of like kicked off the council, right? And I
Yes.
think that's like, okay, wow, there's something that is a bit different here, but it also kind of like spawns new questions, right? So for example, how would people decide whether a proposal that's being championed is significant enough, or whether it was successful enough, or this person put in enough effort, right? These kind of things that are kind of like retroactively or community decided. Do you have some ideas on how that could
So
go
so
already?
so I think one of the ways you can think about it is just game theoretically, right? So nobody like see being a council member on this DAO is serious business. Like that's why what we wanted to say by that you have to champion a proposal, and if you don't do it, then maybe the council member position is not for you. So this is something which is very important, right? It's serious business, and it's a big responsibility. And the second thing is that what we felt is that if you're bringing a proposal to the entire community, which is not just your own community, it's all the other DeFi communities combined. You will bring something substantial. I mean, you're not going to just do something for the sake of it, because it's your own reputation as well. Which is comes. You use so this is kind of why we've chosen also people who have those let's say thought leader credentials, like people who think deeply, have demonstrated those kind of traits about ecosystem building. So what we feel is that the way we are structuring this, again, like all of this is an experiment. All of this sounds great in theory. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I'm sure there'll be some mistakes, and we'll have to do some fine tuning here and there. But the core thought process being that we do believe that by getting the right people, like by choosing the right council members, we will see the right kind of, how do you say, proposals come out, and these proposals will represent in some way the will of the community, right? And of course all of them will be put to a vote, so it's not as if bringing the proposal is just the easy part. And those proposals, which, let's say, so for example, let's say I'm a council member and Ishan is a council member, and then both of us come out with proposals which overwhelmingly the community votes for, then that adds to our personal credentials as well,
Hmm.
of those of ecosystem builders, of sort of Web3 sort of champions. So which is why we feel that the way we have structured it, I think this potentially could provide a very good incentive, which which for people to bring out good proposals, and also building like a token for that DAO, etc. Also creates like a set of financial incentives as well, right, for teams. So for example, when teams are coming, how do you fund them, right, and how does the DAO's treasury grow so that it can fund even more projects, right? Because you don't want to create a situation where you're pumping in money, that money gets distributed, and then the onus is on you to pump in more money. Like, it has to be self-sustaining. So how do you bring those elements in? How do you design the token economics? So there's several questions we have to answer. I'm sure there will be some fine tuning required as time progresses,
Yeah.
but we're very confident that I think that the model which we have is a great starting point, and I think covers many of the pitfalls of what could potentially go wrong. Yeah.
Indeed.
So just
And
to
it's
add
about
to it, right, I think just the entire concept of DAOs is so new, right? Like Arjun mentioned. So I mean, even if we look from the outside, the biggest of DAOs that we can see, and we might think that everything is figured out, but now that even I personally am part of these bigger DAOs, I've personally seen that a lot of it is just learn and go and execute, and then unlearn and execute it better. So
yeah.
there are all these sorts, different things that I've seen also, how they operate. All of these biggest DAOs have different operational mechanisms. There's no right and wrong answer, no one size fits all solution.
Yeah.
But there are some underlying problems, right? For example, one of the biggest problems is aligning the right quality of people to the right roles. I mean, everyone wants to contribute, but how do you align incentives? How do you align the people to the value that they want to bring? These are general DAO questions, which I think over the course of how DAOs develop, we will start to see a little more about more thought leadership about what can be done about such issues. So yeah, I think at this point in general, I think it's just learn and learn some more, grow, learn and learn. All that's
Sure.
all that particular sort of a cycle currently. So that's all.
Sure. I hear you. Basically, get in the right people, and then all these details can be figured out together in an iterative and experimental way, right? And in a way, I think this also serves as a call to action for anyone out there, right? If
Yeah.
you have certain ideas to contribute, we can just go ahead and talk in a forum and or try to run for a council member or become a delegate for votes and exercise your rights, right? Like,
Of course.
and this the whole idea, right? Crowdsourcing all of the details and ideas of how to implement it, and then experimenting with them as part of a collective in Web3. And so now, just wrapping up, because I know we only have a few minutes left, I'd like to just zoom out a little bit and just do a 1 minute per person, very quick kind of like outlook on what are you most excited about. We've talked about so many things related to Polygon, but outside of Polygon, what are you paying attention to? What are you excited about? And then just wrapping it up there.
Sure. I'll just jump in. So for me, I think so. There are a couple of things on the infrastructure side. Very excited about ZK technology. I think that's very game changing. I think if you're a young, engineering graduate or even in, finance major, you should definitely read about it. I think it's going to be very mainstream in the time to come. So very interesting there. Also very interested to seeing this sort of you could say coming together of NFT gaming and DeFi, right? So one of the things we've seen with Axie Infinity is that you have this play to earn model where you have NFTs, you play a game, and then you earn money, right? Which many people like have used to buy things and pay off their mortgages and things like that. So I think when all of these concepts come together is when you see the real power of blockchain coming out. So I think a lot of these novel new concepts are very exciting for me. And as time progresses, like the metaverse, right, which brings all of this together, I think that's something very exciting for me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so for me, what I noticed just in the last few weeks is basically, Party DAO releasing Party Bid, that where you can just collectively form a DAO, collectively, bid on an NFT. Like, for example, that zombie NFT got bid for 1,200 ETH, which is almost 3.6 million. No one could have bid. And then that entire NFT was then fractionalized on fractional art, and they were then, ERC20 dead tokens were created, which people could then swap against their ETH. So it's like basically, the holy trinity of DAOs plus DeFi plus NFTs coming together. And, I own part of dead tokens as well. So, I can also proudly say that I have a fractional ownership in that token. So, but I'm really excited about, how now you can just create DAOs on the fly with Party Bid, and, you can bid on things that were previously inaccessible, and now that brings even more avenue for even Web2 users to come and enjoy these legacy products like CryptoPunks, which only the whales can afford right now. So, really excited about how all of these things are now starting to, gel up together and create a lot more mature market and mature, use cases. So really excited about, what is happening on that front.
Right. Convergence of a DAO, DeFi, and NFT. Wow. And that's, I guess, the definition of the metaverse indeed. So we have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much again, Arjun and Ishan, for your time. And hope everyone here has benefited from today's session. And we'll see you next time.